Now for probably the biggest game this weekend, at least most polarizing game. Matchup between two NFC East teams, the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. This one turned out to be a really good game, and it got crazy, ridiculous, whatever you want to call it at the end. A lot of fooleries, penalties going crazy, turnover on downs, 1 yard short. We'll get into all of that. But this one definitely did not disappoint. As the Eagles, they moved to 8-1 with a 28-23 victory over them boys.
Yeah, Cowboys kind of needed this one. They needed it to be a win. They didn't need the loss. They needed it to pick this one up as they were already sitting in an awkward position. I think like 2.5 games back. Now they're, I guess, 3.5. Except one of those three is directly a loss to the Eagles. So they got a lot to fight for the end of the season. A lot of people immediately said, "Well, it's over. Eagles got the division." Not really. Things could still happen. It's likely that the Eagles are going to win this division, but the Cowboys could pull it back from here. But this is a major blow, and the Eagles played a pretty good game. So we'll look at it on paper. Jalen Hurts goes 17 for 23, 207 yards, those 2 touchdowns, no picks. Gets 36 rushing yards, and of course scores a touchdown through the tush push. It is what it is. It's gonna happen until somebody can figure out how to stop them from sliding over Jason Kelce. The Eagles are gonna get the tush push touchdown. You just gotta figure it out. DeAndre Swift leads the Eagles on the ground with 43 yards, but it was actually Kenneth Gainwell who scores a rushing touchdown. Gainwell, of course, is going to be the lead back going into the season. Will get hurt. Swift then comes up and kind of takes on that role. But still, Gainwell has found himself in the end zone a lot this season, regardless of not being the lead back. So still kind of that red zone guy that they look to. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have very good games. Both surpassed 50 yards. Both scored a touchdown. But A.J. Brown's streak of 125-yard games does get snapped. He just got 66. This game just wasn't really high yardage-wise either anyway for the Eagles. They did enough to win the game, of course. But, Hurts finishes with 207 yards. If A.J. Brown got 125 of those, it'd be a crazy split between him and the rest of the team. Not that that's impossible, but, it'd be a little weird. Still, him and Smith both scored a touchdown, do enough to get their team through. And the Eagles played pretty well overall against this team. Looked a lot more tested than maybe they have through some other parts of the season. Crazy to say considering they have lost a game. But the Cowboys put up a fight. They just couldn't quite overcome the Eagles' defense, especially towards the end of the game. So, on to the Cowboys. Dak threw a lot more than Jalen Hurts, that is for sure. They would go 29 for 44, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. No picks for him either. Maybe not the most efficient game, but he did have a pretty good game in the air. Pollard led the game on the ground, but the Cowboys didn't score on the ground, and really they didn't rack up many yards on the ground either. Not a bad day rushing. They get 73 overall compared to Philadelphia's 109. So not a massive split there, but we do maybe expect a little more from this Cowboys running game. CeeDee Lamb erupted for 191 yards on 11 catches. Wasn't able to bring in a score. Had something more unfortunate happen later on. Not quite as big as the stat sheet might make it seem, especially when you look at the play-by-play recap because of some other circumstances, but does end up being a little costly. We'll get there. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, had a really good game despite the loss. 91 yards and a touchdown. Big day for him. Jalen Tolbert and Kamante Turpin would bring in the other 2 TDs from Dak. So good game offensively for the Cowboys. They just come up just a little short as they stall out in that last drive. CeeDee Lamb does fumble right as the game is ending and the time expires. They did count it as a fumble against him. So again, costly move for CeeDee Lamb at the end of the game. Maybe time's going out anyway, so the play just doesn't quite work out. Among other things that happened in this wild finish of a game. So I'll just turn it over to you. You've alluded to it. You got to see a little more of it than I did. So you should go in on this one because the end of this game is something, as the Cowboys would score to make it 23-28 and then force the Eagles to punt. And after that, boy, did the Cowboys play some football.
Yeah, before I just get into the second half, because I mean that's really where things kind of went crazy. Um, I think I stand by what I said when we did the picks. We both picked the Eagles, but I think in a matchup, obviously within the same division, you're gonna play twice a year, just like last year. I think the Cowboys will probably get the win in Dallas whenever they play later in the season. I think they'll split the season series as they did last year. Because look, the Cowboys, they very easily could have won this game. I think outside of the first drive where they literally did absolutely nothing, um, Tony Pollard, just a couple runs there and then incomplete, just like that. Get the ball to the Eagles and they go on a long drive, convert a couple fourth downs. Outside of that, the Cowboys played really well in the first half. Obviously, the tush push, brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, they came out with that. They, looked like they were doing a hard count, and then they ended up going for it anyway, and they got it. I'm like, oh my god, like you literally cannot stop these guys. It's just not possible. And they talked about it. Greg Olson, Kevin, throughout the broadcast is like the way the Eagles look at it is if they can get into a third and 4 or 5 situation, they're looking at it as like, okay, this is just a second down because we know if we get into a 4th and 1, 4th and inches, we just get Jalen Hurts up the middle, and it's good. You can talk about Tom Brady a lot. I know Skip Bayless will being the greatest QB sneaker of all time. But just like regular QB sneaks, he was great at that. But this is like a different level of efficiency. I mean, I'm sure at this point they're probably like 30 out of 36 on 4th and 1s for like the past year or so. I mean, it's ridiculous. So they convert that, they go all the way down the field, they score. But again, the Cowboys, they played a really good first half, and they went into halftime with that lead, 17-14. And I was impressed. They didn't, like you said, they didn't really run the ball in this game all that well. Um, we talked about it. Will Tony Pollard be that guy that can completely replace Zeke's production? Probably not, but I figured, they would at least, since they drafted Deuce Vaughn, I figured he would be in there a little bit more running the ball. Obviously, we don't know if he's going to be that good in the NFL. It doesn't automatically translate from college to NFL, but I figured they would try to get him involved a little bit more. They really haven't this year. It's mainly been Tony Pollard, running the ball. And as a complete number one option, not sure if he's really that, but again, they played pretty well in the first half, came into halftime with the lead. And right before I pass back to you, it looked like things were getting a little rough for them coming out of half because he went down 28-17. But after the Eagles punted, that's where things got crazy.
Yeah, second half they come out. They look good in the first half, of course. As you said, they're up 17-14. Eagles then score on their first drive, make it 21-17. Cowboys had to punt after a decently long drive. They got 4 minutes. You don't want to take out 4 minutes, come away with nothing, but they do. And then right after that, the Eagles have a longer drive, a 6-minute drive, where they make it 28-17. And then the Cowboys have a 6-minute drive of their own where they end up turning it over on downs. And things look a little hopeless as it's now 28-17. You wasted a lot of time and you have punted and turned it over on downs so far. But they force the Eagles to a quick 3-and-out on the next drive. And they score a touchdown on the next drive pretty quickly. 5 plays, 2 minutes, they get down. They make it 23-28 with a pretty big touchdown to Dan Tolbert. They fail on a 2-point conversion attempt, hence the weird 23-28 scoreline. But it's not all over yet, as they get the Eagles to go 3-and-out again, forcing them to punt, and then they get the ball back, and this is where the Cowboys start to die, as they end up turning it over on downs on a 10-play, 3-minute drive. They're hoping they knock themselves out of being able to get a field goal by missing the 2-point conversion, but realistically, that's not really knocking themselves out because if they get the extra point, it's 24-28. Field goal still doesn't do anything. So they did what they kind of had to do in that scenario there. And you go for 2 and you make it. If you succeed, you make it a field goal game. If you fail, then it's almost the same as missing or hitting the extra point. So they got to get downfield, get a touchdown. They start to make a little bit of movement. Some big plays to get them downfield, starting immediately with a 21-yard pass to CeeDee Lamb. Unfortunately, though, as things start to look a little bleak, they get further and further, get to about the Philadelphia 29. Again, field goal is not going to work here. And it becomes 4th and long, and after a 3rd and long, and then they turn it over on downs there. And yet, hope is still not lost, as they have once again force the Eagles to go 3-and-out really quickly this time, just 30 seconds, which gives them a very short amount of time to try to make something shakier and get a touchdown. And they will, again, fight their way down the field, starting pretty far back, and immediate big play with a penalty. Defensive PI will give them 36 yards to move up the field, putting them at about the 50. Jay Ferguson will make some plays here. They got all the way once again to about the same spot. Philadelphia 27. Otherwise, other time they're at the 29. And then everything goes wrong here. Well, they get called for delay of game for one. That doesn't help anything. After Dak is sacked before that, a big sack to be fair. Then they get called for delay of game, makes things a little worse. And 3rd and 26, the game's on the line. You got 5 seconds left. They do get a 23-yard pass to CeeDee Lamb, but he will fumble, and as he fumbles, time expires anyway. And Dallas, after all these hopes in the second half, after playing a good first half, can't quite close it in Philadelphia, which is why I'm inclined to agree that I think the way Dallas loses this game is just a series of unfortunate events all the way around. So I believe if this game is in Dallas and they've got their own home ground, a lot of these kind of foolery things that occur maybe don't. Maybe they got a little more confidence, a little more bravado, get on the field a little more confidently. Don't turn it over on downs as much or stall out as much. So yeah, the Eagles do a good job of clamping up and forcing the Cowboys to not be able to convert despite their huge chances on those last 2 drives, and all the momentum kind of sliding Dallas's way after the Eagles started out the second half hot. But I do think the Cowboys showed a lot of life here. They could have easily won this game if any of those drives had gone just slightly differently and they get down and get a touchdown. And this one might be over, and they come out with a win. They'd be 6-2. Eagles would be 7-2. The division would look a little tighter there, but they don't. They do, however, I think convey to the whole world that hey, these guys come into Dallas and we can take them. I think I'd be inclined to agree.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a game where it turned out like I didn't think there was ever going to be a blowout or anything, but let's say if it was, obviously now people are going to really be calling the Cowboys frauds. Even though they just beat up on the Rams. The Rams are not good this year. And Matt Stafford is not playing. They're simply not good. They just came out, they blitzed them last game, and they got that victory there. But if they got blown out in this one, I think people would have definitely been calling them frauds because their 3 losses, 2 big losses to 2 of the best teams in the NFC, 2 of the teams that made it to the championship last year, and then the Cardinals, who are horrible. So I think people would have been criticizing them. And again, I started this video by saying these are 2 of the most polarizing teams in the league, and probably one of the most polarizing matchups to have, especially on national TV. But with that being said, I think again the Cowboys definitely played really well. I have to give credit to the Eagles, but looking at these last 4 drives, I mean, you eloquently went through it, but just to break it down a little bit more, like let's start with that first one. Started at the end of the 3rd quarter. They're coming off of 2 touchdown drives by the Eagles now. So it went from a 17-14 lead to a 28-17 deficit. So that last decision at the end to go for it, 4th and 1, I understand it. You know, we talk a lot of times. We say you should have taken the field goal, should have took the 3 points. We say that a lot, but in this situation, I kind of understand it because you just allowed 2 touchdowns on defense. It's 3-point lead to now 11-point deficit. I get the thought process there, and it's just unfortunate that they get it right at the 1-yard line, but you can't get it done. It sucks, but it happens, and they're still able to get a touchdown on the next drive. So it wasn't the end of the world, but it was definitely rough. And this is coming after they had another 4th down earlier on that play or on that drive, where there was a lot of weird stuff going on. Like they didn't. I still don't know what really happened there. They did say that Dak got the 1st down on that run, but then the Eagles challenged it after there was a penalty that should have been a dead ball. If they didn't get it, there was a lot of weird stuff. So they would convert that anyway. Then you had that 1-yard line play Again, it was rough, but not the end of the world because they were able to come back and get a touchdown pretty fast on the next drive after the Eagles go 3-and-out. And now you still got time left. You're down 5 points, 6 minutes left in the game. This one was rough. You get this drive is the one that kind of frustrated me the most. Not as a Dallas fan, of course, but just watching because they were playing as if like, okay, this is the end of the game, right? They were down 5 points, so you still need to get a touchdown. At best, you can get a field goal, right? If you can't get a touchdown there, but there's 5 minutes left in the game. They had 3 timeouts. You also include the 2 minute warning there, so basically 4 timeouts, a little under 5 minutes. I don't like how they were playing, um, as if that was going to be the last drive. Like I get not wanting to leave time for the Eagles, but at the very least, you had stopped them on the last couple drives, and I just don't. I didn't like what they were doing there, and they were wasting way too much time there. I mean, you had the 2 minute warning, and then they get that next play off after the 2 minute warning, and then the next play, darn near 40 seconds later, 4th and 8, and it's just like, what are you doing? That got sacked twice before the 2 minute warning. It's just a bad drive. They turned that over on downs, and then the last drive, penalty, 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 penalty all over the place. You had Slade and Bradbury get injured. You had Bradbury get flagged on a play and get injured on the same play. I mean, it was ridiculous. Had a roughing the passer, which not egregious, not compared to ones we've seen in other games. But again, it's like, that helps him out on Hassan Reddick, that roughing the passer. And then you get a couple more penalties on the drive, delay a game, which is just like, what are you doing? And then you get that last play to CD Lamb. Short, I feel like somebody pointed out, I just realized this, I feel like they probably should have had somebody possibly behind CD because they got pretty close, but where he was, I feel like they could have had somebody there if he wanted the lateral, akin to what we saw in the earlier game with the Chiefs. Could have had somebody there to possibly run that one in. You didn't. Game's over. I don't want to say, oh, the Cowboys easily could have won the game, but I mean, it's true. There's a lot of mistakes here. And considering how the Eagles came out at the half, you know, I understand why they went for that fourth. But, after that, some of the decisions they made, considering that they had stopped them on defense on multiple drives in a row, I mean, 3 straight drives, the Eagles went 3-and-out. It's like, knowing that, I feel like they could have made some different decisions. But all in all, I think it's still an impressive performance by the Eagles to be able to pull that one out in the end with all of that foolishness going on. And definitely excited to see these guys play again later this season.